Martin was in kindergarten, so that means he was 5 years old. It was snowing. It was icy all over the place. It was a typical winter day, I suppose, in those days. And the kids were playing outside. And we had guests. So Colin was in the living room talking to somebody and having a drink or something. I don't know. They were all, anyway, it was a little bit of a party, not much. And Michelle came in from playing outside in the snow and said, Nigel says that Daddy should come outside. And Colin was talking to a guest, and he said, I'll be there in a minute or something. And so after a minute had passed and he hadn't gone out, Michelle comes storming into the house. She's 5 years old too, and walks into the living room. Her father is talking to a guest, and she says, Nigel says that Daddy has to come at once. And such was the urgency of it that Daddy went out, and there is Martin. He slipped on the ice, and he is unhappy. So he carried him in, and I still shudder when I think of it. We stood him on the floor of the living room to see the damage. There was damage, and it required another emergency visit. But we had no idea how bad it was. So into the car with the boy, off to emergency, and this was an interesting experience because after they looked at it, I got these strange looks. Well, we don't have the equipment here for such a small child, so you'll have to go to the hospital, to Oshawa. So off we go, Martin and myself, into the ambulance, Dad following after. I kept answering the question, and how did this happen, Mrs. Beale? And how did this happen, Mrs. Beale? Oh, he slipped on the ice. And how did this happen, Mrs. Beale? And when I was telling the story to a friend later, she just looked at me and said, why didn't you just tell them you threw him down the stairs? Anyway, into Oshawa, and x-rays. The blessed boy had broken his femur. So it was an x-ray at Oshawa, and then they said he had to stay in the hospital because it wouldn't work with a cast. He had to be in traction. So there, my little boy, 5 years old, stuck in traction in a hospital over Christmas. When we got to the hospital on Christmas Day to visit him with, of course, I can't remember, but gifts galore, his reaction was, what, more presents? Interesting time. He was in the hospital for several, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how many, 5 weeks? 6 weeks. And eventually he came home in a body cast. It was quite obvious, it was quite a bad break. And then that became interesting because we had a bed set up for him on the Chesterfield in the living room so that he would be with the family, not upstairs in bed all the time. Yeah, but Martin didn't want to eat the delicious lunch that I had prepared for him away from the family. He wanted to be with everybody. So he crawls off or climbs off the Chesterfield in a body cast, crawls along the floor to the kitchen where the rest of the family are having lunch and eats his lunch off the floor. No, he did have a plate. He didn't eat it directly off the floor. And so he's eating his lunch off the floor in the kitchen with the dogs, and the rest of the kids are sitting at the table eating their lunch. And that's how it went for 4 weeks while he was in the body cast. An interesting time. If you've never seen a 5-year-old in a body cast climbing the stairs, you've missed a good opportunity to have a heart attack yourself.